Hello, everyone. Dr. Yonit Arthur here. You are on the Steady Coach, and it is another fantastic day because I get to share another success story with you today. And this one is near and dear to my heart because Kim was one of my coaching group participants. And I find these so gratifying because I remember what these folks looked like on the first day when they were really struggling. And then I get to interview them and see how far they've come. So this one is no exception. Kim is going to go into a lot of detail today on exactly how everything got started for her. She had an episode that set everything off. And at one point, she was completely debilitated, except when she went surfing, which was one of the things that clued her in that this was neural circuit dizziness. And happily, today, Kim is doing a whole lot better and is ready to share her story of how she got there. I think you're going to learn a lot here. Each success story is unique, and there's always at least a couple gems from each one that you can use and apply towards your own recovery. Let me know if you enjoyed this. Leave some questions and comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. You can also like the video, share it, subscribe to my channel. These things are so important. They help me reach more people. And if you're listening to this as a podcast, you can also follow the podcast. All right, please enjoy this conversation with Kim. Thank you again so much for agreeing to share your story. We were having a conversation before we got started about how much the success stories meant to you during your recovery. And it's just so awesome that you get to pay that forward now.
Yeah. I think it's the main reason for wanting to do this. I didn't have to tell my story, but I think, like I said earlier, if I can help one person gain hope and know that it's going to be okay, and if hopefully something will resonate with somebody here for sure, because all the content on your platform was helpful, but I found these the most motivational for me and the most uplifting and like my North Star when I was like down in the dumps, like wanting to kill myself. So, I mean, and I was there for sure.
Yeah.
So, I know I wouldn't do that, but that's later on. But yeah, so I'm excited to hopefully just help one person, if not more.
You're going to help more than one person.
I hope so.
I'll tell you. Yeah. Every time I post a success story, there's always something unique and special.
Yeah.
I mean, because every person, of course, has just a different experience, and there's always something for people to take away from.
Yeah.
So, all right. So before we jump into your story, you want to just give us some context about who you are?
Sure. Right now I'm 53 years old. And I don't even know sort of what to say. I'm a super active person. I was married 20 years. Well, I'm only saying this sort of stuff because it really is pivotal in the healing part of it too.
Yes.
Married for 20 years, and that plays a big role in this. And I've been divorced for 6, but single parenting for about 10 now. I have a 20-year-old daughter who's amazing and really was sort of my North Star in this too, of really being like, it was interesting. But, and again, just a super active, independent person, but with a lot of trauma and stress behind me that I had very much distracted from for many years. And just was trying to live my best life. When I went on that first Zoom call, I was going to Costa Rica for 4 months, and then I didn't, right? Like I was like, oh my gosh, I'm finally free. My daughter is like, she went through a bout of depression and she's good, and I'm going to just go. And then this all hit. But at any rate, I'm basically an active person, a lot of friends, close to my family. Lived in Santa Barbara for 20 years. I actually moved out in June, so I didn't have a home. I sold my cars. I didn't have any furniture. Like the whole, like, it's ebbing and flowing here. But all in all, and not working right now. So I want people to understand that too, and not having a mate when they listen to this. Well, I had other like sort of what I want to call obligations or stressors when I felt committed to having to show up for people. I also only had myself too, which had its pluses and minuses, right? Like I could focus 100% on myself. I'm not like financially incredible, but I'm also okay. So I was able to pay for doctors and have access to what I needed when I needed it. And I know in socialized medicine or otherwise that has its benefits and not. So I think everybody has to be and this isn't answering your first question of who are you, but we all have to be so sensitive to everybody's situation is different. And I empathize with those people who are like, I can't get in to see a doctor for 8 months. I literally would have lost my mind,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Yeah.
But at any rate, so all in all, I'm a super fit, healthy, active, happy, empathic person that was hiding a lot.
Yeah. Understood. And my
Yep.
gosh, I remember that first coaching group meeting that you were at because you were in such a bad place.
Such
You
a
were in
bad.
such a bad place, and it's just remarkable. I mean, sometimes people I mean, we see a lot of people who start their journeys obviously being in that incredibly difficult place, and then to get to then witness where you're at now is
Yeah.
just it's just so satisfying to me. I wish I could do, like, a montage of, like, what like, a little surprise you with, like, a little video, like, "This is what you looked like that
3
first day,
inches
and here
falling
you are
apart.
now." Yeah, here you are, right here for YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
was, and this will come full circle as we get to the end and the spiritual piece of it, but I was so attached to something I couldn't control, and I learned that along the way, right? I was so attached, and that made my situation even worse,
Mm,
and I became this
yeah.
victim, and I suffered intensely because of it. Yeah,
I cannot wait to dive
yeah.
into this. Let's
So
try. I mean, I'm so bad at this because I could just keep talking and go down that rabbit hole, but I'm gonna
yeah,
try for the
yep,
sake of the people on, the time who like the timelines. Let's do the chronological timeline thing so people
okay,
know how everything started and when it started. So, can you give us kind of that timeline idea when things
100%.
started, what happened, and what happened next, etcetera?
100%. And I'm just going to start by saying this, Dr. Yo. I'll give you the timeline, but I want everybody to know the year prior, that year I was moving myself out of a place that I'd been for 20 years. And that all felt good. That was fine, right? Selling everything I owned. I sold my cars and I'd shift everything to the East Coast where my mother has. We have a family home. But there were indications along the way. And I just want to start by saying that because after all this went on, I had gone to Morocco for 3 months surfing, came home, went with a friend. Nothing happened to her all summer long. Fatigue. My body was falling apart underneath me. I had gotten a parasite. So that happened. I had a bulging disc in my back that was shooting down my leg. That happened. I came back to the East Coast in September, and I'll preface this by saying this all hit in October. So came back to
And
Santa
what
Barbara in
year?
September. This
October
last year, 23.
2023. Mhm. Yep.
So I came back in September. My daughter was she was starting school back here, college, and we had to find a place to live. And I remember walking around and saying, holding my neck like this and being, my God, like I'm 53-year-old. What is going on with my neck? It was hurting so much. Like, and I had looked at, they're like, this is like normal, nothing's wrong, right? And it was just like my body was, and I got tendonitis in both arms. I couldn't lift things. My body was falling apart underneath me, and I was not paying any attention to it. So, at any rate, I moved my daughter in here and I go back to the East Coast. My mother's on an island off the East Coast, and I go to spend some time with my mom, pack for Costa Rica and all that. So, I'm in the basement down there rolling my lower back, which on a foam roller, some chiropractic. And now, so people know, in 2016, I had whiplash and concussion. Whiplash was really bad snowboarding. And I am a surfer. So neck is definitely an issue, right? So I was rolling back, but the roller was on my lower back. And I came up and it was Alice in Wonderland. Everything just started to spin. I think what is true, like vertigo that people think of,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And I just fell back and I started screaming for my mother, who's 81 years old now. Like, and I was like, what? And she came down and I couldn't get off the floor. It was an hour on the floor.
Oh,
Never, she didn't. We're Googling it. I call my doctor and she was kind of like, don't worry about it. You don't do it. But I remember my friend had it and he told me about the Epley maneuver. So I was on the floor for an hour. I slid myself over to the stairs on my back and I did the Epley maneuver. And it gave me relief to like run up the stairs on hands and knees so I could get to the main floor. And then I just stayed there and I couldn't move. It was still, I couldn't get up or anything with a vertigo. It was like a lot of
mm.
people are like, I did the Epley and I was fine. I was like, I wasn't. And
Wow.
Sidebar, I definitely have health anxiety, 100%. So I had a bout of anxiety in 2016 where I was working with a naturopath for sleep who put me on a ton of supplements. My anxiety got heightened and she was throwing all these things at me and I just went the Google rabbit hole and for 6 months I struggled severely with anxiety. But I got through it. But I had to, like in this process you guys will hear, I had to rule out everything. And so the Curable app was handy in that. But so I went to a chiropractor that night who adjusted me, and I think that was probably one of the worst things I could have done, just logistically.
And so
So
the curable app was something you would use prior,
no, no,
not
no, 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 I shouldn't have said
okay,
that. That came
okay.
from you,
That came
but
from us. Okay, later.
that was in the process, yeah.
Got it.
This is where you have
Okay.
to keep me on track.
No worries. Hey, between the 2 of us, we can do it. We can manage it
Okay,
together.
you can do this. Okay, so at any rate, I go to the chiropractor, I come home that night, my mother drives me, I'm still not feeling great, I get in bed, I turn my head, I still have the crazy, like, vertigo.
Hmm.
And again, all I know is that people doing the epily and being fine. Go back to the chiropractor 2 days later, he literally is, like, doing the full-blown crack, which I don't really do, I'm not that's just not me. And then he's like, maybe you need to go to the emergency room just to rule out, right? Because down there, all you can
Has
do is
to
go to the
be.
emergency room
Yeah.
on this island. And so they, all the CT, angio, they checked the inner ear canal, all these tests. And then some women came in and did the testing again. They're like, you have right posterior.
Mhm.
Um,
BPPV?
yes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay, fine. They said they cleared it. Okay, great. I go home. I'm like, no, I don't. Like something. I'm not cleared. I'm not cleared. So 2 days later, we go back to the emergency room, and we're like, this isn't cleared. And I think that's when they did the inner ear canal because the ER doctor actually called me the first night and said, "Geez, Kim, there was something on your ear canal. We might want to look at that." So we went back, and I pushed to get. Of course, there's nothing there. So then they send me to PT on the island. And so she does, and she has dealt with vertigo. So she does it, and she's like, well, now you have it in the left, the other one, whichever one I told you. Now it's in the other one. I was like, okay, they said I had it in this one. I was
And
like,
the right
okay,
one, the left one. Okay.
so now she clears that. It's like, okay. Go home. What should I do? Started doing because I'm a go, go, go. I'm going to solve this. I was also doing the vestibular exercises, and that was all kind of fine when I did that stuff. And so she was like, come back in 4 days. We'll check it again. And then she decides to do the barbecue roll. So now I have it in the lateral canal. So now Kim has vertigo in 3 different canals.
That's pretty talented. I mean,
And she's like, this is really unusual. I was like, of course it is, because that's
yeah.
how it always goes. And I kind of feel nothing to back this at if it really was crystals in the beginning, and it really was true vertigo. And I don't know if that's
It
also
very well
another,
could have been
it
crystals,
very
yeah.
well could. Yep.
Mhm.
His adjusting me, if it really was the crystals, could the crystals have popped around all over the place? I don't know. Just an assumption. So at any rate, I keep going back to them. They're like, get on a plane, live your life, you're fine. I was like, I am not fine. Like I am not fine. And my neck during this whole time, Dr. Yo, was just screaming the entire time, muscle relaxants. I sat with ice, heat. I couldn't get, it was holding on for dear life. And so I think, so that was October 25th. November 11th rolls around. I said, my mom, I was like, I got to get on a plane. I asked my doctor back here, I was like, is it safe for me to fly? She said, yes, it's safe for you to fly. I was like, okay. And at this time now, things are getting better, for sure getting better. I can do the exercises. I'm even practicing pop-ups because I'm like, God forbid it takes surfing away from me. I will walk off a cliff. Like I can't do that. And so I really am getting better. So I make the flight, but within this too, I want people to know I was taking Xanax here and there because the anxiety would get worse. The nausea was constant because I was queasy constantly. And I was freaking out constantly. So I was like, but I've got to get this neck looked at. And on the East Coast, they couldn't get it approved. So I had to get back to California. So I got on a plane and you leave the island. I got on a boat, was totally fine. I remember talking to my friend, like, we're gonna surf when I get back. You know, my friend picked me up, drove me to Logan Airport. I was sitting there for 2 hours with all those people. I had no vision, nothing. I get on the plane, all fine. Didn't even take my doctor's like, take a Xanax if you just feel like you're gonna freak out. Didn't take a Xanax. Got off. My daughter met me down in baggage claim, and I was like, what the actual is going on here? It was just like, and she looked at me and she, bless her heart, 19 years old at the time. She's like, you look like
Mm,
crap, to say it nicely. I was
yeah.
like, I said, get my bags and meet me outside. It was just like I didn't know what was going on. Like I hadn't felt this at all on the East Coast. It wasn't the vertigo. It was fast forward, it felt like that maldebarkment, right? I was just
Mhm.
like everything was just like coming and going at me. We got in the car, it all stopped. And
As it
so we
does.
get, as it does, right?
Yeah.
So we get to I was staying at my friend's duplex they have here, and Zia dropped me off and went home. And I woke up the next morning and I went into the bathroom and I just felt like I was walking on marshmallows. And I took it was just all those sensations people talk about. I took the corner to go in the bathroom and I was like, I was just flabbergasted, and I was pissed at my doctor, like I shouldn't have flown, like then all the self-sabotaging stuff. And that afternoon, my daughter drove me to the ER in California because I had taken a walk with somebody, and I came back and my neck started to seize up, and I was like fit, like a lot of times you feel like you're swaying. Like I was like, she's like, what's going on? I was like, babe, I have no idea. I don't know. And so whatever, we went to the ER, same stuff, different ER, right? No MRIs. I mean, the amount of CTs I got, we'll take Ativan. And then they gave me like prescription stuff for the neck, like whatever it was. I was like, you guys, that doesn't do anything. It doesn't help my neck. My neck doesn't calm down. And, you feel like you're losing your mind, right? But it was that sensation of just swaying that was like completely different than what I was experiencing on the East Coast too. And so then I went down the Google hell rabbit hole
Oh.
while going through your program, and
Oh, so you found me pretty early then?
so I found you. Yeah, I didn't mention that. I think found you on the East Coast, but I wasn't willing to hear you. Right.
Well, it was still so I mean, you thought there was something horribly physically wrong, potentially
100%.
like a brain
Yeah.
tumor or something with how you
Yeah.
were
Well,
feeling.
and
Yeah.
I was attached to, I remember this now that I say this, I remember lying in my bed up on the East Coast, and I was talking to a friend, Bessie, back here bawling, like I was supposed to, like I was so attached to going to Costa Rica, and then like that got taken away from me too, right? Like all of a sudden Kim gets this like little ounce of freedom. And it's
Yeah.
like, so I was attached to all of that, and I had to get rid of this, right? Like I had to, I could, this wasn't, the path I was going to walk, right? And so that was in California too, right? I was looking at the House Institute down in LA. I was trying to get into UCLA. I was going up to Stanford. Like I didn't do any of that, but I was like all over the place. But yeah, so I had found you on the East Coast, and I would listen a little bit, but I was like, like this isn't, no, we're going to get rid of this, and we're going to get rid of this like that. I'm going to take a pill. Somebody's going to do something for me. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so when I was here, I saw, first of all, I saw two neuros, two ENTs. I did a VNG. I saw multiple chiropractors, an acupuncturist, a doctor of osteopath. I did cranial sacral.
Mm.
Um, and I even saw an ENT down on Martha's Vineyard twice too. And he did an audiology test. He's like, it could be Meniere's. I was like, I don't think so. I'm pretty intuitive too, and I don't mean it like that, but like I'm one thing I am is connected to my body.
Mhm.
And then he's like, and he did say the cervicogenic dizziness, if I'm saying
That's what
that.
I was wondering 'cause of the ne
He
that
did
that would
mention
be
that. And I
yeah.
still to this day, like, notice if I'm having my board on, like, putting my board on my head and it's, like, compressing, I'm like, "Ooh, that, like, doesn't feel right," and I
Right.
shake it off and it goes
Right.
away. I do
Right.
100% think there's a little bit of a neck component in here.
Mhm.
I think it's a small component. And also, I'll go, that segues into, after seeing all these doctors, one of the neurologists, um, did call it maldepartment syndrome, but he,
Mhm.
like you, is like, it's just a fancy French term. It's all the same. It's central nervous system, right? You
Really? Who's
whatever
this
you want.
wonderful neurologist? That's so great.
He he
Yeah.
was really great, and and he held my hand for a long time until I was like, "I'm done. We're out." But and he's like, "This is easy. We can cure this." But I did do a VNG, which
Mhm.
showed all the this vestibular stuff was fine, like hearing, but I had
Yes.
square jerks,
Yeah.
which is also indicative, I guess, of a central nervous system
Yes.
issue, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
that I attached to that too, right? One neurologist said, "You may never get better." He kind of was completely dismissive. Um, and I had something else to say with that, but at any rate, I found this
Just for people's
neurologist.
knowledge about square
Yeah,
wave jerks. So it's a finding, it's a non it's not totally nonspecific, but it's a nonspecific central finding. In other words, it's eye movements that don't fall into the normal range, but it
yeah,
doesn't necessarily tell us whether there's a physical issue or if it's a brain processing issue.
yeah,
Central could mean either one. So the fact that then your neurologist said it's just a fancy term, it's just MDDS, this is a particular set of symptoms, but there's nothing physically wrong means that your particular eye movements were the result of a what he expects to be a processing issue, not a physical issue in your brain
that's
or your
exactly.
central
And
nervous
because
system.
he said, yeah, and he's like, "I'm not concerned about this. It's only because you're having these symptoms that it leads me to believe," right?
Mhm,
It wasn't like, "Oh my gosh." It's just like, well, you're having this swaying and motion and visual disturbances and and we see this square jerk. So it's
mhm,
all aligning
mhm.
appropriately, right? You have nothing physically wrong going on.
Right.
Um, so his thought was, A, Kim, you're not special. I've seen this for years, right? He was at John Hopkins in Washington, D.C. for years and years. I trusted him, and he was
Mhm,
a very kind guy. And I will say, as a sidebar, what I've learned is, and it's also my trauma patterns behind me, I needed people that I believed truly were supporting me. Like, and I trusted 100%. And I wasn't trusting everybody along the way. So it just
How could you?
made me go down that rabbit
Mm,
hole, right? Because everybody was telling me different things and stuff. So basically, I stuck with this neuro who introduced me to. Now, mind you, I am spiraling this whole time. I don't want people to think I'm just
oh,
like,
yeah.
"Hey, I'm in a fetal position in my bed," and we can talk about my worst case, but, like, so this is November 28th, right after Thanksgiving, I finally get an appointment with him, this neuro that I stayed with, and he basically had this concept, which still to this day makes sense to me, but again, I don't think if you're willing to really receive it, nothing works in
Mhm,
my eyes, but he was like, "We're gonna suppress the nervous system with Valium." I was like,
mhm.
"Okay." And I felt like, because I was sleeping so poorly. I'm also super sensitive to medication. You could call me side effect Sally, but I can take very low doses. And he had me on a low dose, but I was just like dragging my heels. I took a walk on the beach, and the ocean was like, I was like, and I called him. He's like, "All right, let's get off that." But his first concept was to suppress.
Mhm,
So then he's like, "All right, we're going to stimulate now," because that didn't work. So, like, let's stimulate the nervous system with Keppra was
mm,
one of the ones he tried with me.
mhm,
And I was starting to feel a little bit better. I possibly could have been feeling better on my own, right? Still doing the eye movements. I'm taking slow walks, not really exercising, but still, I want people to know I'm getting in the water too. And when I'm in the water, no symptoms. And that's when I also knew, like, okay, this is where Kim is 100% present, happy, at peace with community. She can pop up on a wave. She can surf without a leash, so she's not losing her board. And I just needed to keep doing that to remind myself, there's nothing but this, this can go away. I guess, like,
Right,
it
right,
reminded me, like,
right.
you have moments, like, you are athletic here. You are going under the water. You can't see. You're like, you've got these big waves coming at you, and you are fine, right? But
It's
so
like
then
that
the
inconsistency that we talk
Yep,
about, like, that does not make sense if you have a like a
not at all.
vestibular disorder, like in the sense that the ears aren't working right or something. That
Yeah,
doesn't make sense. Yeah.
100%. And
Yeah.
that I think really helped me because I'm also very like, if you give me the facts, like, and I understand it, okay, done, move on. Like I get it. And then I can clearly just, but at any rate, he gave me the Kepper. Even my friend a couple of days was like, wow, you're looking really good. I was like, I know. And guess what Kim does on Saturday? She does those line things, those stupid, the optokinetic things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was flipped upside down.
Yeah.
I was sick as a dog. And he even said, again, like when we talk about, he was like, stop doing that stuff. I was like, but I want to get better. He's like, your system can't handle it right now. He said, all you're doing is aggravating your system. So he had a really lot of good points that aligned with you, right?
Hmm.
These aren't what you know. And I'm not saying, again, for me, these aren't what you need to get better. I could walk. Yes, it was, but I wasn't, I could jump up and down again, pop up on my surfboard. And all I wanted, I was just aggravating everything. To this day, I still have nystagmus in my left eye,
Mm.
because my primary checks it because she's now just fascinated. She's like, I want to check and see what's going on. And she also just said, you could have had this prior
You
to
could have
Halloween.
been born. You could have been born with it.
Nobody told me
Nystagmus.
that before,
Yeah. It's like
right?
if that's what I tell people. It's not that nystagmus itself is not the problem. It's what
Yeah,
is behind the nystagmus. And
yeah,
sometimes you just have nystagmus and that
yeah,
doesn't mean anything.
yeah,
And that's it. And sometimes
yeah,
nystagmus is a sign that something else is going on.
yeah.
So that is
And
so
I
I'm so
didn't
glad you
know that.
mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So glad you
yeah,
mentioned that.
yeah, because it just is I mean, I'm curious. I have an appointment with her in a couple weeks. I wanted to check it just because I'm curious, but
It's still there?
it's
Yeah.
insignificant, right?
Mhm.
Um, so at any rate, that happened, and so this was probably beginning of December, mid beginning of December, and I was just frustrated. And, and again, I'm giving this guy, I'm paying out of pocket for a neurologist, isn't $50, right? So every week I'm going to see him and I'm like, what is going on? And he's like, you're not an easy case. He's like, you're sort of defying. But I also believe I still, even there, wasn't ready to fully accept because like people talk about, well, I don't want to take this. I don't want to take that. And I think I want people to understand I was on a benzodiazepine to sleep for 3 months. I got off it fine, and I did Lexapro and I'm still on it, but you can get off of these things.
Mhm.
I mean, yes, be concerned if you have addictive personality or something, I guess, but if you need things in the moment, I think they
Mhm.
only help you getting to that next moment, right?
Right.
Because you're just gonna get stuck, I think. I mean, I did, and it's like, sometimes we have to get off that loop too, because our mind
Exactly.
is just telling us these things that aren't true. We're believing our own stories that most often aren't true, and they're just sabotaging us. Because I had this whole story in my head, and it was just making my whole life worse,
Right.
right? So, and I kept but I would keep having the conversations, "I don't wanna be on the temazepam." She's like, "Kim, you have to sleep. When you don't sleep, everything gets worse too, right?" She's like, I promise you, you will get off it. And sure enough, I didn't even wee. And I was like, I'm done. I had a couple nights of not sleeping and I was fine. I
Mhm.
don't suggest people doing it that way.
Right. Right. But
But
but you got off it. Thank
I
you for that message too, because people get so fearful. And
yeah,
again, I've always expressed I'm very neutral about medications. If they help, fantastic. If you're not, if you choose not to take them, that's fine. But I think people feel a lot of shame and a lot of fear about the idea of being on a medication. Even though I say it's temporary. You're doing this to help kind of break this fear loop and help you do the other work you need to do to get better. Um, but I appreciate you sharing that tapering wasn't such a big deal for the benzo and for the sleep medication. The
and
Lexapro, did she start you on that or were you on that prior?
so she did. And I just want to say with that stuff too,
Mhm,
like again, it is just a moment in time. And if you can't get out of your own way, sometimes we need something to help us. And
mhm,
I am a huge proponent of natural stuff. I try to take as little as possible, either right, like, but if we
mhm.
can't get out of our own way, sometimes we just need a little assistance.
Yeah.
And if people are shaming you, get rid of them. Like if you can't be around yourself in this moment, get rid of them. Like
Mhm,
100%. My group got very small of who I felt comfortable with.
mhm,
Um, but so in the process, I had switched primaries and this woman is amazing, and she once a week, she's like, "Just check in with me." So she was one of those people who were part of my support system,
Mhm.
right? And we would just go and talk, and, "How are you doing?" Right? If nothing else, but she had another woman she dealt with, who had this for about a year, and again, I always have sidebars. I went in full-blown menopause in December too, so the neurologist said,
Oh
"You're in
my
a perfect."
gosh.
Right, so I was in a perfect storm
Oh,
here of
oh,
menopause,
yep.
neck issue, which I had facet injections, I didn't say, I had trigger point injections,
Right,
they did
nothing.
nothing.
Right. Right, right,
But
right.
so I had some sort of neck issue though going on, I went into full-blown menopause, and I had this central nervous system issue, so
And
this
a huge life transition.
and a huge life transition, and I came back to California where I had no place to live, I had no cars, I was living out of a backpack, I still am, and I'm at a friend's house now, like, I rented a place, but my whole life had been flipped upside down, right? Not that I couldn't afford to rent a place, but I literally had nothing. Like, I wasn't going back to my home, whatever. So she put me on Lexapro because I'd always had issues sleeping, and she just thought because of the drop in hormones and, what comes with menopause, that's I was on the lowest dose Lexapro, this could just help, and she
Mhm.
had given it to this other woman who, after a year, finally felt herself, and I was gonna go off Lexapro, but then I'm like, "Who cares?" I'm at the point of who cares if but I also want people to know I didn't take it to solve the issue, this neural circuit issue. I did it to give space to accept the neural circuit issue, right? And to sleep so I could then show up for this neural circuit issue and
Yes.
not react and not blow it out of proportion, right? This wasn't solving that. This was a bigger picture, right?
So, so brilliant. So glad you shared that point. That
Yeah.
yeah,
'Cause
yeah,
I
very
think
good point.
people when I was reading for, like, "Is this going to help?" It's gonna help you maybe feel emotionally better, maybe if
Right.
you need Lexapro or Zoloft or whatever. Um, so
Yeah.
so,
So
yeah, so
so December rolls around. Like, this seems like a good time to ask because this
yeah,
sounds like when you were at your lowest.
yeah,
So what was that like when you're just at your absolute
okay, yeah,
lowest?
that's where I was gonna so that probably really so Christmas is coming up now, right? And I have my daughter here, and it really is just small. It's my brother and my mother, right? It's been a just little unit. But my mother's on this stupid island on the East Coast. My brother can go anywhere. And I have that stress of what's happening. I was like, I'm not getting on a plane. If you want to come here, I'm going to rent a place for 2 months. You can come, right? And so she comes out, and I think having my mother here definitely made things worse because, she's not telling me to like my daughter's like, "Mom, you've got this. You have to stop listening to Nini." That's what she calls my grandmother, her grandmother, and like whatever. But I was and then my mother broke her hip while she was here too.
Oh,
She's going to
yeah.
look at my daughter's little rental. She slips and she breaks her frigging hip. And I'm sitting in that hospital. I was about to lose my mind. I was just about to lose my mind. And then I felt so guilty that she broke her hip visiting me. But at any rate, I was literally in the fetal position. This was when I was still going to the chiropractor. I was crying every day in the fetal position. I was calling friends. I remember one time calling my friend driving to the chiropractor, and I was like, "I just need to talk to you because I wanna drive my car off the road right now. I can't do this anymore. I This is not me. I can't." And it was that thing, like, I was sending my mother and my brother videos, like, "I need for you to watch your videos, like, your success rate of how frigging miserable this is. I feel, like, trapped in my body, and I feel like you don't understand how this feels." And it is like the word I said, "Give me anything else." I'm grateful now. No, I take that statement back. But
Yeah.
but in that moment, I literally, like, I was crying all the time, and I wanted my life to end, and my friends were showing up for me, and my family was showing up for me, and my daughter saying to me, I was like, "I don't want you I want you to go, but I don't want." She's like, "I'm fine," but, like, it was awful. I wanted to die multiple times, and I knew I wouldn't do it. I really do. I would never do that to my daughter. If nothing else, I would never do that to her. But that's how I felt in my
You
head.
didn't wanna be here.
I
Yeah.
didn't wanna be here,
Mhm.
and when I would get in my car, I was like, "Don't do it, Kim, don't do it. Don't do it, call somebody, like, don't do it." But it was mostly in the car, because like, you're driving and you're like, "Okay, I feel fine," and I was like, "Please don't turn red, please don't turn red, I have to keep going, I don't want it to stop, I don't want it."
Mhm.
And it was really, really bad. I mean, I wasn't seeing anybody, and my friends would constantly check in, and even when I would try to see, and they were great, they were like, "You guys know I was so tired of saying, 'I'm sorry, no, I can't, like, I have to leave,' and, it was all a complete contrast of who I was too, right? I'm this super engaging, like, life of the party, always wanna do things, up for anything, active, and I was just, like, crawling deeper into a hole, and I couldn't get out of my own way. I just couldn't get out of my own way. And I remember calling this, and even Christmas, I was in bed crying while it was just this little two-bedroom, and everybody came here, and it was a day after Christmas, my mother broke her hip, but, they're all in the other room, and I was just in my bedroom crying the whole time. I didn't even wanna come out. Um, and so I remember walking around in tears, and my friend had given me the name of this therapist, and I called this therapist and just, bawling on the phone saying, like, "Do you have any time?" And she didn't call me back until after the New Year. I went in to see her on January 2nd, and she was Buddhist trained. She's a Buddhist, and
Mhm.
she said to me, she said, "Kim," she said, "We all suffer." She said, "Until you accept this, you're not gonna be able to move on." And I was just sitting there crying. I don't even think I said much that time. And, yeah, I don't know, I saw her one more time, and we were talking about suffering and accepting, and I walked out of there, and I was like, "It's the only choice I have." Like, I can't do anything else here. Or because I told her, I said, I she said, "Do you feel like you're gonna hurt yourself?" I said, "Well, I do, but I promise you I won't." I said, I just can't take it anymore." I mean, I really felt that way. I just couldn't do it. And so that was a bit of a turning point for me. And then 2 other friends sort of said some things to me. One was just like, "Kim, it is what," I mean, my we're all very honest with it. She's like, "It is what it is." I was like, "But I don't like it." And I'm bawling to her, right? And she's like, "Well, you're gonna have to, and you're gonna have to wrap your head around it, and you're gonna have to just deal with it." And I was like, "Fuck,"
Wow.
you know,
This must have been I know, this must have been
you
so
know?
hard to hear because
But I knew it, like, this is what I
yeah,
need, like, it's like a
yeah,
slap in the face for me, right? And
yeah.
then one of my other friends who's an ophthalmologist in town, and her husband's a cardiologist, they were doing a little bit of research on the cervicogenic dizziness. She's like, "I think there's something here, I've never heard of this," right?
Mhm.
But she's like, and then she came, so then I ended up going and house sitting at one of my friend's house when this all started to go slowly uphill, which was great. But she came over and she was like, "I think you need to think of this like a cancer, and it's going to go away, but you just need to know that you're going to be in this." And she said, "Kim, the brain is neuroplastic. You are not going to be like this forever." She said, "You are not. I promise you're going to be like that." And I trust them 100%. They're so
Mhm.
intelligent, and she has my best interest in mind. But she's like, "It's not going to go away quickly. You're not just going to snap your fingers." Um, and so it was kind of those few things, and the therapist being like, and I would call her like, "Suzanne, can you just talk for 15 minutes?" Like, in these times, like, she's like, "What's going on?" I said, I almost like felt like I was going to drive my car off the cliff again. She's like, "Where are you now?" I said, "I'm at home," but like, and whatever. So it was sort of that slap in the face. And in that time too, I said to the neurologist, I was like, "Nothing's working." And this was when my mother was I told my brother, I was like, "You've got to get her out of here. I can't do." The
Yeah.
poor thing. I was like, she's
Mm.
walking around with her walker, and I love her. But
Yes.
she wants to be all independent, and so then she'd leave the walker. I was like, "I can't have you fall. I can't have you fall again. Can you please just use
I
that
can't
walker?
take care of you
I
too while I'm
can't take
trying to
care of you
yeah,
too, and I care
yeah,
too much." I said,
right.
We need to get you out of here." Because my brother lives in LA, and he flew back with her eventually, and that's when it really started to, okay, I can focus here, and whatever.
And where
Um,
was the coaching group in all this? How did that help?
Okay, so yes. So I was just gonna so come sort of December, I don't know, remember when I actually like went on that live one, but it was when I went
Mhm,
into that rental, which was mid-December, because I remember
mhm.
sitting in that room. And
I remember. Oh my gosh, I remember.
yeah,
You were
and
such a bad place.
and it it put I would go on it every day. I started to one of the women reached out to me. I had a few behind the scenes conversations,
Of
right?
course,
And
yeah.
one of the women gave me her phone number and we talked a lot, right? Supporting each other. She's been in it for longer. I don't want to say her name in case
Yes, please.
for
Yeah,
privacy.
yeah.
But and then I would just go on, and then I was just go on and read, and I started commenting, but I don't think I started commenting until I started to feel better, and I could give people more positive
Mhm,
support than, "Oh my god, I'm feeling like that. What should we both do?" Like, I didn't want that to be my narrative either, and
mhm,
I knew
mhm,
I had to change that and show up for people differently.
mhm.
But it played a huge part because I was like a lurker almost too, to some extent, right?
Reading people's experiences.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And again, watching the videos, I kind of stopped watching any of the eye videos or how I'm gonna heal from this. I had to dip my toe in when I had a question, "Wait a minute, I need Dr. Yu to re-explain, like, neural circuit dizziness and visual disturbance," or something, right? Like, and I would
Right, right, right.
what I was seeing. But I did the whole program too. I did the whole
Mhm,
program probably in November, actually, because I can see where I was at that time. I was in my
mhm,
friend's place, and,
mhm.
that was super helpful. Like, I just went through that whole thing too, right? Because it just helps remind you, even if you're not ready for it, like, this isn't what everybody is telling you, right? It's nothing. I don't wanna say it's not severe, but it's not life-threatening, and
Right, and it's not irreversible.
it's not irreversible,
Right,
right,
right. Mhm,
right. Um, so yeah, that played a huge part in it, and the success videos were huge, like Joella's,
mhm. Joella.
because
Mhm.
'cause she got that sort of Mel Debarkman sort of
Yes.
stimulus feeling, right? But we seemed to have sort of I felt like I just could relate to her personality-wise and everything,
Mhm,
and then there was this other woman, I can't remember, and she was like, "I'm gonna do this." And I remember you saying, like, not that she was type A, but she's like, "Give me a task and I'm gonna do it." And she would just like and she just did it. And I was like, "I'm gonna do it. Like this is doable." And
mhm.
I am the only one that's derailing myself right now.
Wow. This was a bit I mean, this took a lot of humility to
Yeah,
I mean, as you said, you got the slap in the face, but it was really your choice to say, "I'm gonna have to accept this." And I just wanna make a note of here
yeah,
about acceptance because I think people misunderstand acceptance as like, "Well, I'm gonna feel this miserable forever," and that's not what you mean by acceptance. So,
yeah.
I'm wondering if you could say a word about what you mean by acceptance.
So it's accepting this moment is all it is. Here is where I am right now. And what am I gonna do with this? Am I gonna freak out and move with fear? Or am I going to look at this and say, what can I do in this moment? And in this moment, so it's not laying down and being like, I'm out. It's actually it's more empowering than doing that because I'm looking at this, right? I'm not looking at, well, do I get to go to Costa Rica now next winter? Do I get to? It's what I'm doing right here, right now. And it's being fully aware of all of my behaviors that attribute to perpetuating this. I guarantee you I could have got on that airplane if I didn't have health anxiety. If I didn't spiral out of control, I guarantee that airplane ride would have been fine. But
Mm,
my body kept telling me, and I didn't wanna listen. So it is empowerment, and that's where Suzanne, who was his first therapist who was Buddhist in the Buddhist training, and I think any spirituality I will say as a sidebar, Peter Levine just put out this my friend went to these talks down in San Diego that I was gonna go to because I dove deep into nervous system. I find it so fascinating about the connection with spirituality and trauma, right? And
mhm,
how spirituality, I don't care if it's Christian, Catholic, whatever it
mhm,
is, how belief, but I think Buddhism, Zen, Tao is a beautiful thing because we take ownership in its present moment and it's all about suffering and what we can do about that, right? But so
mhm.
this therapist had to go on vacation, and she's like, "I think you might," and I was like, "Oh, no, we just started, like, 2 weeks ago. You can't leave me. I need you." And she introduced me to this gentleman who I work with twice a week. His name is Michael, and he is brilliant. He is like a gift from God. I'm not religious, but he is a gift from God, and he does IFS. We go into these he is gifted.
I'm going to pause just to explain. IFS
Yep.
is internal family systems. It's often used as a type of therapy, but it's not only therapy. It's a modality I'm also trained in, and it is a very experiential form of work.
Mhm.
So instead, like rather than a type of therapy, like a very common type of therapy, CBT, which is where, you'll say, well, that thought's not rational. How can I think differently? Um, IFS or internal family systems teaches you to relate to yourself differently and is very mindfulness based and focused on learning how to be with your present moment experiences, kind of just making this relevant to what you were talking about, just giving the framework for people who don't know what IFS is. So please
Yeah, yeah.
continue. You said
Well,
he
and
uses
so
IFS.
and I did
Mhm.
it, Dr. Yo, because of I was like, "I need somebody trained in this because of your
Mhm.
suggestion," because it's very somatic, right? We
It's
sit
very somatic. Yeah.
in that feeling, and then either something will come into my subconscious or we just process a feeling without, but it definitely releases something, right?
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
feeling. So I can only highly recommend that to everybody if they can find somebody to do that
It's
for
it's
them.
it's
It's
really
life-changing in
wonderful.
so
It
many ways.
is. I agree, and I've seen it through my own work with people. Of course, I always tell people this is just a good time to insert my opinion. Why
Yeah,
not, right? I love inserting my opinion into things. Of course, most importantly for outcomes of therapy, the relationship with the therapist, the trust, because you touched on trust, and then also your ability to disclose emotionally or have strong experiences in therapy. So, in other words, if you're just talking to someone about your difficult experiences and you're able to really have strong emotions and what they call in therapeutic terms have high emotional disclosure with your therapist, that's also going to predict how well you do. And so in your case, what you're describing is sitting in these experiences in IFS. That meets that criterion. The
yeah.
the the strong emotional experience or the strong experience component of an effective therapeutic alliance.
And he actually said exactly the same thing because
Oh,
every
did
time
he?
well, he's like, "Kim, you're
Yeah.
so easy because you're completely honest and you drop right in. You don't
Yeah.
hold anything back."
Yeah.
And it is exact because I tell him one of my things is I've always and I know a lot of people have said this on the forum, like, "You're the caretaker," but he basically and I have no problem sharing if this helps anybody, but I basically have this adaptive personality since we're learning since I was a very young kid. I've
Mhm.
always felt like I haven't fit in. I'm, like, always outside the box kind of girl, but I have done so good at creating that adaptive personality.
Mhm.
And so it all fine and I look like I'm great. I'm engaging with everybody. I can be friends with everybody. I have no but, like, inside, I'm, like, dying a slow death, right? It's not that
Yeah.
bad, you know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and, um, and I thank Michael so often of, like, I know you're not just saying like, he's like, "I want you to check in with me, text me how you're doing later,
Mhm.
this, that, the other," and I know it is 100%. I know he actually cares about me.
Mhm.
The relationship we've created is so special, and I want people in this too to know I did a session yesterday with him that discovered some pretty crazy stuff, and I couldn't sleep last night, and I had to take a Xanax. I want people to know, like, still all that is okay. I couldn't, because he even said it, there are gonna be times when you just I couldn't shut I felt like I was gonna throw up, that's what happened, 'cause the emotions were so intense, and it was just embedded in me all day and night, and I just needed to shut it down, and they are intense, but you're gonna uncover so many things, and the other thing I just wanna say about that, Dr. Yo, is every time we go in, guess what happens?
Of course you get symptoms.
The
Yeah.
neck seizes up.
Yes.
He checks in
Yep.
before, like, "How are you feeling?" Like, if I'm not feeling great, a lot of times we just do more talk.
Mhm.
The neck seizes up. I'm swaying. I feel like I'm gonna throw up. I get the
That's
visual
so
disturb
interesting.
and
Yep.
it's like, how can it not be this I
Oh,
mean, I can't answer why we are the fortunate, I want to say we're the fortunate group where it manifests like this, because we get to do this work and come out bigger, better, and stronger. But so many people can go through and not have this happen with the trauma that happened in their lives. But I feel it was 100% a blessing.
Mm.
I truly do. Like, I can't I used to do, Costa Rica was a distraction for me, right? Kim's just going to run to the next place to feel something, to get away, to do. I was drinking a lot. I don't even drink anymore. I was constantly like, where's everybody? What are you doing? And now people are like, want to go out. I was like, no, I'm going to stay by myself. I'm like enjoying myself. That's new, but it's, and this whole spiritual path is just, I couldn't be happier. Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know what to say. And
Wow.
I want people to know that they can get there too, but I really think you got to get out of your own way. It's sort of like self-love here. Like, you've got to get out of your own way. You got to get rid of the pity party. We all went through it. You have to go through it. I think. Yeah, like, I hit rock bottom and I didn't want to live there. I could not accept that that was going to be my life. That was not an option. Option 2, option 1 wasn't worth it. Option 1 was not a choice. So, yeah.
Yeah. One thing that you said, so you said a whole bunch of stuff I
Sure.
want to get into over
Yeah,
the last couple minutes.
yeah,
One thing I just want to normalize for a second. Okay.
yeah.
So I have had some very intense emotional experiences in a therapeutic setting as well. And I've had the experience of having spinning vertigo after talking about something that was extremely stressful and overwhelming. I don't think that that's abnormal. I think that that's quite normal. We just tend to think of our minds being completely divorced from our bodies in our culture. So, I to me, when you say it's so interesting that my symptoms suddenly show up when we talk about tough things, I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, your body was probably screaming at you for a
Mhm.
long time to talk about tough things, and right now the volume dial is up pretty high because it's had to yell at you to get your attention,
Exactly.
right?
Yep,
But
exactly.
the goal is to establish this relationship with yourself, with your parts, using IFS terms, so that they don't have to yell at you anymore. And
Yep,
then that's going to happen less and less over time. So just wanted to say that piece
yep,
of things. But coming back to this, you just said two really, really, really important things. So the first thing you said was that I'm blessed that this happened to me. And I never put those words in people's mouths, and I never assume that someone's going to walk away with that, because I think that would be very presumptuous on my part.
mhm.
But I hear this over and over and over again in these success stories. And I think that it's hard for me to tell what direction it goes in. Like, is it the type of people who tend to see meaning that end up getting better, or is it that getting better really means seeing meaning? To me, what it means is there is some component of transformational change happening when people get better. And I love that we have so many success stories, because people can see that happens to totally different degrees and in totally different ways for each person. For some people, it's just, okay, I just like got to mind my stress a little bit. And for other people like you, it was like there was a there was a change in how you relate to yourself on a very fundamental level. And it happened in response to a tremendous amount of stress in a very short period of time, not to mention an accumulation of whatever was going on in your life. So to me, the I'm blessed this happened, it's not that you're saying you're happy you've had symptoms, because that does suck that you had to suffer that way. But would you have been able to change in the way that you've changed if you hadn't had them?
I wouldn't have,
Mhm.
because I would have kept living my life exactly as I was, because seemingly on the outside, and potentially to me a little bit, it seemed okay.
Mhm.
Running to Costa Rica didn't look like running to me.
Mhm.
And, everybody was like, "Oh, you're so courageous. You're selling everything you own. You're going to a country you don't know." And then when I look back, I was like, sure, it was courageous, but I was running. I was running.
You're running.
Yeah, and I truly, yep, I am truly so grateful. You're right. Like, Would I have wanted to avoid this experience? 100%.
You would never have chosen you would never have chosen this particular experience. Yeah, fair enough.
About that. But I also would be lying a little bit to say, well, I'm grateful that I had friends that kicked my butt, that were honest with each other. I'm grateful for my daughter who was like, Mom, she would always be like, why didn't you serve today? You feel better. Like I'm grateful for people for holding space and
Pushing you.
helping me and pushing me, right? And
Yeah.
not because my mother was being a mother and coddling me. So, right. So it perpetuated. And I can say now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm grateful that I did get the symptoms because I don't think I ever would have listened. I mean, I was in that frozen state from divorce, from my marriage for so long, that I always thought I was a good, kind person. I am such a better person now. And I'm so much happier with myself and how I show up and how I notice each moment in each day and the appreciation. And yes, I can be, I have my moments. I mean, I'm not a saint, but like my appreciation and I wouldn't want it any differently.
Mm,
And I'm
mm.
still on Lexapro
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
progesterone.
Yeah.
Who knew I
Well,
was
you
going to
know
start taking
what?
bioidentical hormones in the midst of all this too?
Oh, well,
And
you
I
know
want
what?
I want women to
Yeah.
know that's legit too. Like, I
I
remember
w
reading all this stuff about
Yes.
vertigo and
Yes.
with just
Yes.
menopause alone. Well, and I also want people to know because they are sort of medication adverse. Like, I never thought I just never thought about it. Again, about hormone replacement therapy, and my primary put me on it. Then I was like, I'm not this was during the height of, like, the worst times. I was like, "I'm not comfortable with this. I wanna go off," and I went off it.
Yes.
And then as my mind started to clear, I was like, "Okay, okay, I'm ready to" right? So, again, I think it's being kind to yourself too and be like, you can do what feels good in that moment, but I always hope that you just sort of revisit. You have to be open, right? And I think we get so closed in this process because we're trying to control it when we literally have no control over it. So we just have to accept it as is and do our best in that moment. But also, like, I came back to hormone replacement after a couple weeks or a month when I could wrap my head around, okay, what is she telling me now? Where am I at? How am I feeling? I'm ready to reintroduce this, you
Mhm.
know? And I think that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't
Thank you
know.
for
I don't know.
mentioning that. I think it's an important part of people's stories that we're not necessarily touching on with everyone. Obviously, they're not at that time of life.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so you have shared so much wisdom in this entire conversation. I just want to ask if you had to sum up your best advice for people who are going through this right now, what would
Yeah.
it be?
Um, that's interesting. I thought about that, and it with a person who has experienced health anxiety, I understand the need and desire to get answers. And I think if first and foremost, if I didn't do that, I couldn't have gotten to the next level. So I just want to say that. Um, Having done that, I think I want people to understand. I want people to find something that's bigger than them, that's outside of them. That's that like this. I think the spiritual practice is so important. And I also, as a sort of learner, I dove deep into, like I said, I have a bunch of different podcasts I could share with you later, Doctor. I'm certain you know them all, the people have listened, but like Deb Dana was talking so much about the nervous system. I educated myself so I better understood too. And again, I have the time to, but I do want to, like, it's just, I wanted to say this earlier and then I'll continue on with this. I notice now when people that I used to be able to hang out with, like surfing friends and stuff that you see, I was telling my therapist one time I was talking to this woman, I was like, I felt like he said it, your nervous system got hijacked. Like, I'm so sensitive to what I feel now too, which I find to be a blessing. But I was like, this woman just like talks at me and and you're like, okay, well. But I think when you can get to this point of being so in touch with your body, it is really a beautiful thing. So like go through your process. I would say nothing is forever, right? The brain is neuroplastic. Listen to some of those kinds of podcasts and stuff to understand really whatever that avenue is that you don't. But I think we all in this process make a lot of decisions from a fear-based um, mind, and the stories we're telling us aren't probably close to being true. And I think we need the spirituality piece will take you out of that. And one of the most valuable books I read that Susanna told me in the beginning with the Pema Chodron, When Things Fall Apart.
Oh, I love that book. I
I
read
mean,
that every day. I read a little bit of it every day.
and you can keep going back to it. I
Yeah.
mean, you
You just
know,
open on a random page and you're
and
like,
you're like,
"I'm
yeah.
doing that too. I'm doing that too."
But
Yeah.
right, and it
Yeah.
shows you it highlight, and you have to be honest with yourself. Like I was like, wow, like here's where I was doing this, here's where I was doing that. Oh my goodness, right? And like take accountability, but then you have to do something with that. I think the worst thing we do is we continue to make decisions based out of fear. When we have control in the sense of we can make better decisions. We can't control what this outcome is be. Some people it's going to take 5 years, some people it's going to take 3 months. It is what it is. But it's also this I don't want this to sound. I know some people are dealing with some. I had visual disturbances too, people. Like I remember trying to surf in the fog and I almost threw up. I couldn't find my bearings. I didn't know what was going on. Like things would come and go. This isn't life threatening. We can handle this. And I don't want to say it could be much worse because that everybody's worse is they're entitled to that. I don't
Mhm.
like that saying of, well, people are dying here. It doesn't matter, you know, but you have control over this and you have a choice. You have a choice how you're going to make your next step because it's going to constantly change and you don't know what you're going to get hit with in the next week or next month. All you have is what's here right now. And I think it changes everything. I really do. And I would say dive into Buddhism if you're not opposed. I mean, there is some beautiful messages there. And again,
I'm
that
so
resonated
glad that you
with
found
me.
that and it resonated. And I want people to know we're going to be having some big discussions on my channel, whether it's I think it'll come out after this conversation does. We're going to have a panel on spirituality. So
Yeah,
that's coming.
yeah,
And we
yeah,
need more discussions about this on my
yeah,
channel. I'm aware. But I also respect the fact that a lot of people who are not spiritual watch my channel. And so I will link to in the podcast or video description below. So if you click more underneath this video, right below the title, you'll see the description. I'm going to link to two videos that I made that just outline in detail how to do this process that you said of
yeah,
being in like the present moment and
yeah,
learning to work with that and get out of the story, which is a lot of the things that you talked about. I
yeah.
have a step-by-step process to that in two different videos. So I'm again, you can check those out if you want to.
Yeah, I think that's really valuable because, and again, you don't take Buddhism and the Buddha and all that. You don't have to take that from him, but just take the practice of that impermanence. Like everything changes and we all suffer. And how we deal with that when the rug is pulled out underneath us. It's how we react. Like that's kind of the Pema book more, right? Like
Yes.
she talks about that groundlessness, right? How are we when the ground is pulled out from underneath us? Because I'm certain that's what we all felt like in this. I did. Like I felt like had nothing. I had nothing solid to stand on.
Yeah.
So it wasn't so much like I believe in Buddha or this or that, but the teachings are more personal on how you live your life.
Mhm.
Right, and I think it helped for me, again, it helped in
Mhm.
this. Yeah, yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah,
That's some beautiful advice. And again, thank you. You brought up some topics I think that really haven't been talked about in my other success stories. So
yeah.
I get to call them my success stories. The other
They
success stories
are,
on
they
the
are
channel,
because
they're
you
not
came
my
up with
success
this.
stories. They're your success stories. Um,
I
but
do have a few other things. Can I say a few other quick
of
things, or is it
course,
too long?
absolutely.
Okay,
Go for
because
it.
I did
Yeah.
write some things for
Please.
just this. It was with the surfing, I mentioned surfing. Find that thing you do really love and keep doing it because it will feed your soul. And you'll remind yourself, like, if it's dancing, if it's yoga, I promise you, you can do it. I mean, I remember some woman saying, Dr. Yo, can I lift weights? Just try. The worst thing is You can't do it today, but you might be able to do it tomorrow. Like, I think those are decisions people have to start to make, because that's fear-based, right? Those are decisions you have to start to make for yourself. But if you find that thing that gets you out of your head,
Mhm.
do that and hold on to that. And then I wanted people to know too that I did the Pain Psychology Center.
Oh,
I
okay.
I
Yeah.
I did that for a month, and, I did find that very interesting, but your information and curable, 100%, like, was in step with, and it was expensive, but it was
Mhm.
in step with what they were saying.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
and oh, these are all just, I'll share those with you later. Have a lot of kindness and love for yourself though too. But and the other thing is meditation doesn't work for everybody.
Yes.
Like,
Oh, thank you for saying that.
right? So
Yes.
I was talking to a friend back east who meditates 50 minutes a day, morning and night, no sound. I did better on Curable app with visual meditations, and I started qigong because it was a moving meditation. Some people just can't meditate in a certain way. You need other, so find what works for you. Just because it says to meditate, but maybe meditation isn't exactly right.
Right.
Like, you've got to find what works for you. I promise you will, and it will work for you, but there doesn't need to be so rigid in that way.
Yes.
And that's
Amen. And for those, again, just providing context, we've mentioned the Curable app a few times. I have a link to get 6 weeks free on Curable for everyone. So if you want to use that, you can follow the link. Also, will be in the podcast or video description. It's a great app, and it's very
yeah.
low cost as well. It's, I think, just such a great resource for people who are dealing with chronic symptoms, whether that's dizziness or something else. A lot of people, Kim, lately have been finding me with symptoms that are not dizziness,
Yeah.
symptoms like tinnitus, like ringing or other sounds in the ears, or
Oh, and I had that
hyperacusis,
too. Yeah.
sound sensitivity. Oh, you had tinnitus
Yeah,
too?
sorry,
Oh,
I didn't
fun.
even mention all the things
Yeah.
I had. I pretty much had everything, I feel.
Yeah. 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 So just for everyone's knowledge, those things are also curable, really helps with that. All the stuff I put out on YouTube, again, assuming there's nothing medically wrong, it
Yeah.
doesn't really matter like that much. And I mean, it matters a lot to me because I care about your experiences, but in terms of the approach to the recovery, it's going to be the same, essentially.
Yep, and yeah, again, like, that's what my neurologist said too. It doesn't matter what the label you put on it, central nervous system.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
Anything else, Kim? I
Okay.
can't. I have to ask because you've every time you've come up with something new, it's like gold. So I don't want to leave that on the table. If there's anything else you want to share.
No, I don't know. I don't know. I later, I mean, I know we're gonna say goodbye off, and I know people know. I don't know. No, because I could keep talking because I'm actually super passionate about this and opened up a world of, like, I wanna, like, start. I I will say I am shocked that not one, like, Western doctor ever even talks about the nervous system and how important
It's
it is,
it's so
right?
weird. I know. Yeah,
I
it's really
like,
weird.
once I started to learn about it, I was like, "Hold on, I didn't even know that it controls all of this? Like, what is going, why didn't
Yep.
anybody ever tell me to take care of it and pay attention to it?"
Right.
Right? So I don't, I have so much, but I don't. I'm gonna stop here because
Okay.
I am
Well,
just so grateful for all that you have done and the community that you provide and the connections that you make in the content you put out there. I think it is extremely valuable. So, I wouldn't be here having this without your support for sure, that community.
mm,
So thank you for that.
you are so welcome, and it is my absolute privilege.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
tell. I know.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
It's just the most it's the most meaningful thing ever. It is just, yeah, totally my privilege.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. And good luck, everybody who listens to this. I promise you, you can do this. It just, yeah, I promise you, you can.
Yeah. All right. Well, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah.
As Kim says, she has other resources that she wants to share. So I'm going to also, whatever resources Kim sends me that she found helpful, I'm also going to put in the podcast or video description. So this is going to be a very long video description, but it's going to have a lot of goodies in it. So you can check that out again by just looking at the description of the podcast episode. Or if you're on YouTube, you can click more underneath the title and it'll show you the description and it'll have all that stuff in there. So Kim, thank you. And thanks
Thank
to
you.
all of you, of course, for being here and listening all the way through. Leave any questions or comments for us below. And if you could like, share, subscribe to my channel, follow this podcast, all of these things help me reach more people. And yeah, thank you guys so much. As always, we'll see you soon. Take care.